sebentar saya. Oke, Mbak, bisa diumumkan bahwa hari ini hari kedua. Terima kasih.
Ya, terima kasih buat para peserta. Mohon maaf sebelumnya karena acara hari kemarin tidak jadi karena ada sedikit musibah di Ukraine. Jadi acara mungkin akan dilanjut hanya hari kedua, ketiga, dan keempat. Jadi untuk hari pertama tidak diselenggarakan. Oke.
Okay, someone asked me, hello, my name is Olesia Suntsova, do you hear me? I'm from Ukraine. As you know, we have some difficulties with electricity right now because of the war with Russia, but it's okay. I'm glad to see you here. We are unbreakable. You know, Ukrainians are just unbreakable. And despite of all of these things, we will talk about our lecture, about the behavioral can I see my presentation, please?
You can share screen again, Miss.
Okay. Do you see the presentation? Everybody sees the presentation and think? Okay. Today we will talk about the behavioral economics and consumer behavior. And we're talking about economic implication. My name is Olesia Suntsova. I am a Doctor of Science in Economics, and I'm a professor at STEKOM University. And welcome you from Ukraine, from city, hero city Irpin, that was just crushed by Russians not far along. But still, I'm glad to see you here. And okay, let's talk. Let's talk about behavioral economics. We all face difficult decisions, which a new car to purchase, where to go to college, where to take that dream vacation, how or save more for retirement. Traditional economic models of decision-making assume that people make those decisions in what it is often called rational manner. They weigh the cost and benefits of different outcomes, evaluate the future with patience and foresight, and acquire the appreciative information to make good decisions. These models have been extraordinarily powerful for predicting large-scale economic phenomena in the wide range of settings. Now consumers respond to price changes, how words react to information, and many, many others. Traditional economic models work extremely well sometimes monetary intensives decrease people's likelihood to make an action, and sometimes additional choice options lead people to make those decisions. Over the past half century, decision scientists have identified anomalies or biases in people's behavior that can't readily be explained with traditional economic models. This lecture has sparked a new field of inquiry, called behavioral economics, that integrates economic and psychology, and recently towards the goal of better explaining real-world decision-making. Okay, let's start. Through this lecture, you will introduce to the tools for improving the process of decision-making, the information you acquire and strategies you adopt. And we talk about the models, economic models that you can provide to your economic modeling and to do the right economic decisions. Okay, what you will learn how people deal with the different factors that shape their choices, from the value of rewards to the pain of loss, from the probability and risk to time itself. Okay, what is the rational choice models? What is it in the economic? Economics. Traditional approaches to economic decision-making invoke the so-called rational choice model, which is a framework for understanding and often formally modeling social and economic behavior. But what does it mean? The term traditional carries a lot of baggage and leads to many misconceptions. First, misconception is that the word rational means the same thing in everyday conversation as it does to behavioral economists and other decision scientists. When we describe one of our friends as rational, we often want to imply that they are dispassionate, logical, thoughtful, and in control of their actions. However, to a decision scientist, rational means consistently with some model. Rational decisions are not necessarily dispassionate, not well reasoned, not selfish. They aren't even necessarily good decisions from others' perspectives. They simply are constant. And constancy seems like a pretty straightforward criterion. A rational decision maker should always prefer better things to worse things, more money to less. The decisions maker should be able to access which, with choices, lead to more discreditable outcomes. In the language of economics, economists, they should anticipate how much subjective value or utility would come from their choices. In addition, they should reliably make choices that maximize the expectations utility. We should be able to take the past decisions for a rational decisions maker and insert them into mathematical model to predict their future decisions. So today we will talk about how this decision making put into mathematical models and use these mathematical models in economic prediction for the future. Conversely, some whose perfections are inconsistent and capricious would hardly be a rational decision maker. Furthermore, consistently shouldn't just apply to consumer purchases. It should apply to all of behavior. A second misconception is that a rational decision maker must be completely selfish. Rational choice models do not assume anything about what a decision maker prefers. They only state that those preferences consistently lead to choices. So it may be rational to give, to charify, to volunteer your time to help others, or to make sacrifices for the greater good. All of those actions are consistent with traditional economic models, assuming that some derive its utility not only from their own outcomes, but also from the outcomes expended by others. The third misconception is that rationally refers to the decision process. Rationals does not mean that a decision was generated by concisions or logical reasoning process. Instead, rationality refers to outcome of decisions. Rational choice models are sometimes called as-if models. What means as-if models? Meaning that choice behavior can be described as if some followed a rational process, regardless of underlying thoughts, beliefs, or communications. There are many different models of rational choice, each developed to explain different phenomena with microeconomics, consumer behaviors, or decision science. Despite the diversity, these models tend to be built on a few simple foundations. When making decisions, we should exhibit consistent preferences that follows mathematical rules. We should prefer better things to worse things, and we should take actions to obtain the thing we most prefer in the order to maximize overall utility. Incentives. The great virtue of rational choice models are simplicity. Their assumptions are so basic that they almost be tautological. People want more money, not less. Of course, this might be true, right? These simple statements lies at the core of traditional economic models. If it were incorrect, as unlikely as that might sound, then rationality itself would fall into a question. The assumption that people want more money, no less, implies that people should be more motivated by the opportunity to obtain more money. That is, money should be an incentive that can shape their behavior. We know that true in many countries, such as labor market or consumer responses to scale prices. What occurs when an extensive description of our internal motivation for some behavior, such as paying people to give blood. It's one of the most striking findings in behavioral economics, because it calls into question that most basic assumption of rational choice models. What is this simple question? That people want more money than less money. And this would be the right model, economic model, when we're talking about the behavioral economics. On the contrary, in many real-world situations, money can actually serve an disincentive for behavior. This phenomenon is known to economists as revieval undermining. It illustrates one of the deepest themes in the course, that traditional rational choice models explain most aspects of decision-making, but fail in very specific situations. More money is very powerful incentives. Startling monetary incentives the right way can have very positive effects. If a government wants to encourage people to save for retirements, it can create a tax breaks or retirement savings and something like that. If a company wants to encourage its employees to quit smoking, for example, it offers discounts on insurance companies for non-smokers, for example. This sort of incentives do work usually in exactly the ways predicted by rational choice models in economics. When the utility of the incentive becomes sufficiently great, people start behaving in a way that is good for themselves and good for society, at least. Creating and tracking the effects of such incentives represents a major thrust of microeconomics, both in academic research and institutional policy. But monetary incentives do not always work. They fail when they undermine our sense of moral duty. They fail when they crowd out of other sources of motivation. Incentives and rational choice models in economics more generally works some of the times and fail some of the times. And we should understand when these economic models in behavioral economics work and when they will fail. The failures of rational choice models aren't random. They aren't just anomalies that can't be dismissed, rare events that can be explained away. Rational choice models fail to account for the real-world behavior for specific reasons rooted in our psychology, biology, and environmental. Rational choice models fail, and we can know why. Okay, what is the good decisions? Okay. What is the good decisions? Okay, traditional approaches to economic decision making involve the so-called rational choice model, which is the framework for understanding and often formally modeling social and economic behaviors. Okay, now we will talk deal or not to deal. What's the questions? Deal or not to deal? Economics always, okay, you can see. You can chat me something. I will read it later, okay? Okay, the main questions, deal or not to deal. If we decide economics who analyze decisions of deal or not to deal, Constance found something surprising. As the game process tended to become more and more risk-seeking, almost regardless of what happened. Constants who are very unlucky kept chasing after what like money was left. Somebody who were lucky stayed in the game in search of the largest prizes. All of the sounds, lights, and excitements of the game show push the contestants to become more risk-seeking than they probably would be in everyday life. Okay, deal or not to deal? Make decisions about real money. They are motivated by a large amount of money. One constant won a prize was more than $4 million. We might expect that they would make good decisions, but they often do not. What constraints we have by only thinking about to build economic models, mathematical economic models, using the behavioral situation. Okay, constraints. Do people more make good decisions? Okay, do people make good decision when the stakes get large, including buying cars, selecting a mortgage, and saving for retirements? Do they attend to the deals knowing how much more is on the line? The same biases found in the small decisions in the grocery store of laboratory also appear in the biggest decisions of our lives. We do not have special machinery that we can suddenly turn on when we face a big decisions. We are stuck with the same brain criticus that help us forget for good and track down prey. Okay, we don't process information in abuse terms, for example, but in relative terms by comparison to a point of reference. Even so, a silver medal is objectively better than a bronze medal after they win. Olympic bronze medalists tend to be happier than a silver medalist. So exactly how in economics, those economic agents that wins money more are more happier than those that wins money less. And our brains are set up to our reference point. It's a way of simplifying the decision process. Using reference to point does help in many circumstances. But if we adopt the wrong reference point, we lose perspective of what really matters. Okay. Okay. Let's talk about the race of behavioral economics. We have some traditional models. Traditional models, as you can see here in the presentations, we also coined tolls as the simplest sort of gamble. We talk about the game theory in economics and how to imply the game theory, and we also call it traditional model of behavioral economics, and economists of a lot of countries use these traditional models to predict profits or losses of some economic agents. Okay, what is traditional models? In Milan, Italy, in the middle of 16th century, so long ago, lives a physician named Germano Carando. He is the most famous today for his medical virtues, which were considerable, but for more of his vices. He was a pathological gambler. Like the typical pathological gambler, he lost more than he won, but his losses inspired him to invent the mathematical of probability, and we use this mathematical of probability here right now. Cardano Mathworks, a book of games of chance, introduced probability as a way of thinking about gambling. If a gambler threw a six-sided die, the probability of rolling a 5 is one of the 6. Probability is thus defined as a number of desired outcomes divided by the number of possible outcomes. This definition can be applied to set of outcomes as well. There are 4 distinct ways of getting a total of 5 when rolling 2 dice. By multiplying the amount that could be won by the probability of winning, the gambler could calculate what came to be called the expected value of risky choice. This calculation we also use in economics. Expected value is one of the landmark concepts in all of decisions inside, as well as in statistics and economics more broadly, but provides simple rule for decision making. Choose whenever option maximize expected value. However, expected value has its limitation. For example, take the simplest sort of gamble, betting of outcome of single flip a coin. Suppose that your friend pulls a coin and offers you a bet. If it lands hits, you will win $10, but if it lands tails, then you will pay your friends $5. The expected value is clearly and it's battles fair. A $10 gain is twice as much as $5 loss. And indeed, most people are willing to take this bet. But what happens if the stakes are increased? If the coin lands hands, then your friend will pay you $10,000. If the coin lands tails, then you will pay your friend $5,000. Do you take this bet? Executives well argues that you should take that bet. It's still very much in your favor, but many people would decline this bet. The mathematicians and physiologist Daniel Bernoulli, right in the middle of the 18th century, using problems like this to argue that expected value did not account to the people in real decisions for 2 reasons. First, people planned different values on a good, like money, depending on these desires and others. Second, a given amount of money was more important for people who had very little than to people who had very much. So the change of large gain might not be attractive if we risk a large loss. Okay, the next few centuries, economists developed models that assume that people act to maximize their expected utility. Two people might take different choices because they prefer different goods, or one might be risk-averse while the other willing to tolerate risk. By the mid of 20th century, rational choice models dominated economics. Not only because those models could be built up from basic axioms and mathematical operation, but also because rational choice models were undeniably effective. Economists and other social scientists use them to explain market behavior, how companies develop incentives for their workers, how consumers respond to changes in prices, and even questions seemingly outside economists, such as how people vote or why countries go to war, like in Ukraine. But in some ways, the very powerful rational traditional choice model has a building effect in the social sciences. Okay, let's, okay, what is behavioral economics? Behavioral economics applied experimental methods from psychology and other social sciences to problems in economics. Importantly, it begins with observation about real-world behavior, and then constructs models that can explain that behavior. That is the opposite approach from traditional economics, which began with traditional choice models and then applied those models to real-world behavior. And this is the main difference between traditional economics and behavioral economics. Behavioral economics combines methods from economics and psychology. These are both a very large fields of science, so now all psychologists, not will all economists think the same way. But in general, research psychologists think about progress. They are interested in the process of perception, attention, memory, and decision-making that shape you, we think, and what we do. Behavioral economics would likely be interested in both process and outcomes. And all our models will be both process and outcomes. Why people choose something as important as what they choose. So the behavioral economics need to set up experiments that really invoke specific psychological process as well as specific decisions. Okay, we will have such experimental methods in behavioral economics. Behavioral economics experiments are planned with three principles in mind. First, experiment must be insensitive combinable. That is, the participant should have some intensively to reveal their true references. This is usually accomplished by planning people for their choices. The easiest way to maximize insensitive continuity is to pay people for all of their choices. If we pay people for their choices, okay, we can explain their behavior. If we can explain their behavior, we can model their behavior and we can predict their behavior, how they will behave in some economic situations. So a common procedure is to select one of a few choices randomly from all of these choices made, and they pay someone for only those few choices. The second principle of behavioral economics experiments is no deception. When participants come to the laboratory for an experiment, they know that they are in experiment. So they are always the concern that they'll behave differently in the experiment settings and outside of experiment settings. And this is a problem because we use experimental behavior to use in the model, but people somehow can behave this way, and they know that they are in experiment. And Another time, they just walk it out from the experiment from your lab, and they will behave in another way. And this also might be in your mathematical economic model. Okay. Prospect theorem. Okay, prospect theorem. Behavioral economics integrates experimental methods from psychology and economic and applies those methods to better to understand how we make decisions. What simple descriptions cover a very wide range of research and cross many disparate sorts of decisions. There are some more common features that can help us think about many different decisions. Okay. Okay, what in this our presentation we have 3 points of reference dependency where are all relative. They are all relative. They are all relative for behavioral economics. Okay, neuroscience, dopamine. Economics began to recognize neurons played an important role to determine value and effect on their behavior. Rewards prediction error. Okay, rewards prediction error. Okay, about in the early of 19th, the neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz was exploring the functions of VTA dopamine neurons in experiments with monkeys. By lowering a very thin wire into VTA of monkey, he could record the signals from one VTA neuron to a time while the monkey receives rewards that it was such as a juice. Schultz discovered that the same dopamine neuron increased in the firing rate where the monkey receives juice or receives a varying signal about future juice for decreasing its firing rate when the monkey didn't get the juice. It was anticipating. The results point out the first fundamental property of dopamine neurons. They do not respond to rewards themselves, but to the difference between expectation and reality. This is the main concept is now known as reward prediction error. Expected positive events like unexpected price increase the activity of our brain dopamine system. Events that are worse than our expectations, like when we're expecting price but do not get it, but we do not receive any, decrease the activity of our brain dopamine system. This is the main things about reward prediction error. Okay, next is wanting versus liking versus linking. Research of the association between dopamine and rewards has led to a general conception that dopamine is the pleasure chemical in the brain, but do not the activity dopamine neurons really correspond to pleasure. Facial expectation associated with pleasure and with aversion are similar rates, monkeys, humans, and others. They used a very selective neurexin that lesioned our sensitivity damage neurons in the part of dopamine system and their rates. Okay, without an impact dopamine system, these rates no longer wanted rewards like food or juice, and people can do and behave the same way. However, they would still eat or drink if the food or juice was placed into their mouths. They just do not want, and this is a reaction for the experiment. And when we do economic experiment on society, we can have the same reaction. So if part of rat's dopamine system is disabled, it will not work across its change to consume food, but it still shows normal hedonic responses to pleasant and unpleasant stimulation. These results are compelling evidence that dopamine neurons are not associated with experience of pleasure. Experience of pleasure in behavior of your consumer not lead you to your economic profit. Would be the main concept from this weight inverses, like in okay, and you can see the economic value of pathological gambling here. We have some experimentation, and that shows that pathological gambling has been discovered as a behavior that some Parkinson patients have expenses as a result of drugs taken to help them to release. So this point also can be noted when you build your economic mathematical model. Okay, next. Okay, next is the reference difference economic implications. One of the reward prediction error. Dopamine neurons in your brainstem respond to a range of rewards, especially they change their rate of firing and predictive manner. They increase their firing rate where rewards are better than expected, but decrease their firing rate when rewards are worse than expected. In addition, if a reward is completely predictable, as when there was advanced waiting that the reward would be delivered, then the firing rate does not change at all. This is called reward prediction error. The brain creates an expectation that you will win something, but you don't will. And in this way, you have your prediction error. Okay, and the next thing is that the endowment effect. Reference dependence is one of the big ideas in behavioral economics. It leads to some of the most striking biases in our choice behavior. Biases that we can lead to minimize in order to make better choices. One of the most famous biases is called endowmental effect. This bias is depth conceptual. Okay. Now suppose that you weren't one of the lucky ones. You didn't receive the free might and mail, but you do not know anything about promotion. Instead, you just received a mail offer to purchase the same behavioral economics mark. How much would you willing to pay for this mark? In typically laboratory experiment, people would be willing to pay about $5 to purchase mark, no less and no more. Suppose that we have 5,000 tickets available for a game, and then 1,000 people wanted to choose those tickets. If the tickets were first given out to 5,000 randomly chosen people, then market theory predicts that some of the people who didn't get the ticket would try to buy them from those who did, and that the tickets would eventually end up and in the hand of the other 5,000 people who place it. The price of these tickets will be higher. Okay, the random individual changes very well that these students. Okay, let's go for another point. Prospect theory. Prospect theory in economic way. Yeah. Before we will talk about this slide, prospect theory. Just a little theory, and then we will try to build a mathematical model for behavioral economics. What we must do for the first time to minimize the effect of reference dependence. One of the most powerful ways we can minimize and unwanted effects to reference dependence in our behavior, use it when it is helpful, but not letting to guide us astray. It is simplest. Shifting your point reference suppose that you're considering whether to raise the destructive in your auto insurance. When thinking about insurance, the usual way in terms prospecting an asset like your car, you might be relatively conservative and want lower deductibles. But you can shift your point of reference and think of insurance differently. It is something assure about money against. Consider separately the larger and smaller consequences of decision. For example, would you separately buy custom floor mats if you weren't already buying a car? Of course not. Of course not. Okay. Consider examples with two outcomes, with x probability p and y with probability 1 minus p, where x is in this area. Expected utility theory says that if you start with wealth w, then your expected utility value of the game would be as it's shown, yeah. We can use the prospect theory, and we point it as PT that says that PT is value of on the game is as it shows in your equation. We use this equation for our mathematical representation of the behavioral economics, where we found our P is a probability weighting function. Is standard theory P is linear. Our P is always linear. In prospect theory, P is convex first and then convex. As you can see in the slide, our probability weighting function P we can write in this way. For some, in prospect theory, we have our beta here in equation, yeah? And this beta belongs from 0 to 1. The figures that give us our probability when function P can be described like this. Why does the introduction for weighting function P means? The probability weighting function from P less than P for small p. What means the small probabilities are overweighted to silent. People say play a lottery. Empirically, poor people and less educated people are more likely to pay a lottery. Extreme risk evasion. Okay, if we also took this function, when we have another situation, opposite situation, when our function, probability function, will be less than the probability for P, close to 1, large probabilities are undivided. In applicants in economists, our probability function P from P is equal to P is often used except for lotteries and insurance. Okay, let's talk about how we can sign utility function O for behavioral economics. We assume that our utility function O from X is increasing in X, convex for losses, convex for gains, and first order concave at 0, that is like at this equation that shows you in our presentation. A useful parameterization would be like written down like you see in this presentation. So we will have our utility function of x for x is more or equal to 0, and another way of representation our utility function from x when you have your x's less than 0, less or equal to 0. Okay, the graph, how can we have this graph of utility function U? We assume that utility function U from x is increasing in x, converse for losses, conquest for gains, and the first order conquest at 0. That is, using useful parameterization, you will have the graph of our utility function U from x. From all lambda is equal to 2 and beta is equal 0.8 is given below. So you can see how it will be described in a graph. Okay, what do we mean using and this mathematical representation of our behavioral economical situation in prediction, economical prediction of any economic agents, meaning fourfold pattern of risk aversion of our function U. Risk aversion in the domain of likely gains, risk seeking in the domain of unlikely gains, risk thinking in the domain of likely losses, and risk evasion in the domain of unlikely losses. Okay, if we think about this, what results we will have? How robust are the results? Very robust. Loss evasion in the reference point lambda less than 1. Robust. Conversely of our utility function U for all x's less than 0. Slightly robust, undervarying and overriding of probability P. That would be less or bigger than our probability B. Okay. In this way, we can demonstrate the mathematically how we can represent our mathematical view of our new economical model using behavioral aspects. And this point of representation was a mathematical representation of all economic models used by two of Nobel laureates of Nobel Prizes in economics for last 2 years. They use the same mathematical approach that I show you. And as they show it and have the Nobel Prizes, it means that this mathematical view works in our in the whole world of every economic agent all over the world. It works. So let's go to next one. In applications, we often use simplified our prospect theory. How to simplify it? How can we simplify this prospect theory? You can see on this demonstration, I think you will have this. And this means that we use our simplified prospect theory, we use our expectation function, probability function P from our probability P, and use our utility function from x for all x's more than 0 and less than 0. Using this, we will have mathematically view of second order risk evaluation of our utility. Consider a gamble x plus sigma and x minus singular with 50-50 chances. Question: what risk premium P would people pay to avoid the small risk of sigma? We will show that as sigma leads to 0, this premium would be another equation sigma of our function O from sigma in square. This is called a second order risk equation. In fact, we can you have some questions. Sometimes monetary incentives works as motivation for people. What most important motivation economic for a society 5.0 in the next year for next 20 years. Okay. Okay, the answer for these questions for motivation, what would be the best motivation of the in behavioral economics? As I can say that we can predict the most better motivation using the mathematical models. The most in theory, behavioral economics just predict the behavior of all economic agents all over the world, how they will do or not do to win or to lose profit for economic agents. The ways of motivation is more psychologically aspects, and we just can predict this a lot of motivation, like some aspects in the model, some constraints, for example, or some choices of some prediction in some functions. Economics do not show, behavioral economics do not show just the way of some motivation, what these motivations would be, this way of motivation or another way of motivation. We just predict that some behavior, and we know it and can mathematically show that using our axis will affect on behavior of economic agencies, or they win or they will lose. Okay, let's go to next. First order and risk evaluations in our prospect theory. Consider the same gamble for our utility. We will show that our prospect theory sigma belongs to 0 and wants to go to 0. The risk premium P is one of sigma, where reference wealth is x will be equal to 0. This is called the first order risk aversion. Let's compute P for our utility function as it shows, and have a limitation. The premium P at x with equal 0 satisfies our equation, this equation or these equations, where K is defined approximately. Then we must do a calibration, 2 calibrations to perform your mathematical models of behavioral economics. First calibration, we have our utility function, and we use it included by constant elasticity of simulation, says utility. For example, gamble 1. We have 50,000 with probability 1 to 2, and $1,000 with probability 1 to 2. Gamble 2. We don't know how many dollars for sure we will get. Typically, and we show, which just note this dollars for X. Typical X that makes people indifferent belongs to, for example, $6,000 and $75,000 and something like that. Some people are risk-loving and ask for higher this X. Note this reaction between X and elasticity of suspicion would be as it's shown here. And right seems to be from 1 to 10. Evidence from financial markets calls for lambda bigger than 10. This is the equilibrium puzzle. Okay, next calibration, second calibration that we need to do in the modeling of behavioral economics. For example, gamble 1. $10.5 with probability 1 to 2. Minus $10 with probability 1 to 2. Gamble 2. Set $0 for sure. Get $0 for sure. If someone prefers gamble 2, she or he satisfies the equation here from utility function. And here, our P, our utility function, will be $0.5 or sigma will be equal $10.25. We know that our utility function will be leads, and we can mathematically show it how you can see in the presentation. Okay, when we do this calibration, we can do calibration conclusions. In prospect theory, we have a different NG after 2 calibration. We have a different RVP that can be written like this equation. For our lambda is equal to 2 and sigma is equal to 0.25, the risk of premium will be like this. If we want to fit in U parameter to prospect security agent, we have another equation, as you can see, and expose is like this. If someone is averse to 50-50 loss of $100 gain, the G will always leave, then he or she will turn down 50-50 loss L gain to G. And we can represent this in the table, just disappeared in the table. Okay. Do you understand what I'm talking about? Or I need to do more explanation of this mathematical part? What things need to be considered so what the business runs smoothly and in the long term. Okay. For the prediction for the long term, in the prediction of long term, we can use these models, but they will have a huge error, because we can predict the behavior for a small or short or middle ages ago. We cannot predict the behavior of any economic agent more than 10 years. We can predict. We can build your beautiful model, but in some ways something will change in the money. Maybe some propaganda will use, or some marketing things that will just have some influence on person to do something or not to do something. And this happens on this very short time, in very short time. And if we mathematically show your ideal behavioral economic model and try to predict something for more than 10 years. But something very bad or very good, I don't know, something will happen that we cannot predict because it's behavior, because our psychologists and marketologists can influence different ways on behavior of our customers. And we do not what they will pretend to do or will do to influence this in this situation. In this way, your beautiful mathematically economic model would not work. How to do this model will work? We need to obtain your voice noise and to calculate your voice noise. This white noise will be some argument that we do not even we do not know what happens, yeah? And these arguments we just combine in our voice noise in some argument and just put it in our model. And this way we can show what things need to be considered to that business runs smoothly and the long term, mathematically using this new argument of epsilon of white noise. Okay, let's go to our lections again. We have two exceptions of our prospect theory. Using this modeling, we know that is still good for modeling and predicting. Even behavioral economics seek it when they are not interested in risk-taking behavior, but in fairness, for example. The reason that our modeling is nice, simple, and parameterizované. I'm sorry, I'm tired. Parameterizované. Okay. We have two extensions for our prospect theory. Both outcomes X and Y are positive, and we have this is the way how we use the modeling and prediction using behavioral aspects in economics. And here what we have conclusions, gambles, restrictions in yield gives and prospect theory gives, as it shows in the our slide. Okay, answers on. I'll try to give some answers on a lot of questions. Okay. In the perspective of organization behavior, there are three determinants in the organization, namely individuals, groups, and organization systems. The interaction of these three factors in the basis for applications of the concept and theory of organizational behavior, where the interaction of these three factors must be able to increase organizational features. What I can inform about these principles in the experimental methods in this perspective of behavioral economics. It is associated with concept of organizational behavior. Yeah, it's thank you for the question. It's very close. Thank you for the questions. This lecture was about the theory of building any behavioral economic models. As you can see in your here in your list, I'll show you, I state this here. You can see this three way. You can see these three factors, but you can use another factors of any behavioral problems that can be applied in behavioral economic models. We cannot only limit with three factors in organization behavioral that you mentioned. We can use a lot of other factors of another behavior, and do modeling of these factors and explain how they maximum or minimum value or not value to predict any situation in the future for predicting using this mathematically explanation of this. For example, we can use for the start only var or something other another a lot of models, and we just put not only these three factors but another factors what you can want to explain, and just to show experimentally in experimental way you when you rule these models in your panel data, in your panel activity, you will see what factors will lead or not to lead for profit or losses for any economic agencies, not only organization, but as well as country, as well as in macro and microeconomics agencies, non-economics agencies as well. I just represent you the main concept. How can you use modeling for any factors? You can use not only three, not only four factors of behavioral economics and consumer behavior, and how they lead to win or losses of profits for any economic agencies. You can use a lot of factors, and you just can when you lead these models and count these models using panel data on your statistical expectation, on your statistical analysis, and using any variation of rolling this data and model, you can understand in some coefficients that you will see in your model, ruling models, what of these factors improve or disprove your position economical of this economical or agent. What of these factors are useful in your model? What of the factors you must to go away from your model? And this is the point things that this modeling can explain everything that you in practice want to explain, not only these three factors. Thank you for question. Maybe more questions? I cannot hear you.
Thank you for the explain, Miss Olesia. For our audience, if you wanna ask question, you can raise your hand or you can write in room chat. Okay, first question we have Mr. Adi Nugroho. For Mr. Adi Nugroho, the time is yours. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the time. Good morning, Miss Suntsova. I would like to ask you, this is, I guess, about theory, prospect theory. What you discuss is about prospect theory. And is it your development or maybe original from Kahman and Tversky? Or maybe you develop another idea in the development of the prospect theory, and is it maybe you can give your present PowerPoint presentation and maybe another some journal that we can study more, because maybe for me is a little bit new, because this is the first time I see the prospect theory. And can I know, is it this prospect theory can be developed in using in the just like financial, just like a what is called the the up and down of the currency, and can we implement this equation for the to predict our currency, because
Yes,
there's okay.
yes, thank you for your question. Okay, for my presentation, in this chart, I can give you all my presentation. Everybody who presents here and can go to the chart can give it. About the prospect, using the prospect theorem in in forecasting marine currency, of course, it can be applied. It can be applied not only for financing. Finance is a part of economics, as you know, and it can be applied to any economic process of any economic agents. Because decision making useful for any aspect of economic area, not only for currency, not only for finances, not only for profit or other situation, because in any economic agents, they decisions in any economic agents makes people, and people can make different decisions in the same situation. You understand? Different, just the wild, huge amount of these different decisions at the same economic situation, and this prospect theory can be used to show the huge amount of these different decisions that can make the CEO, for example, of some economic agent. CEO makes decisions and rule economic agents form organization somewhere to get something. Yeah, the main decisions making in behavior of organizations, of course, will be humans. What is CEO? But whatever they decided to do with this organization, you can predict the result. For example, if you have the huge lot of results for this modeling, for example, if you have your probability that some CEO will take turn off this decision, and you see your graph, and you can explain what will be with your economic organization, with your economic agent, if the CEO will lead this decision. And you will see, will organization or will this economic agent, will, for example, country receive profit or will lose some money. You have the, as I show in my presentation, I will give you this presentation right now in chat. You will see the graph in any decision, and you will see what will you have with your organization if this or this or this or this decision yourself will do. Understandable?
Okay. Yeah. I will. Okay. I will download the presentation.
Yeah, I try to give you a presentation to this chat box so that in this. Okay.
Is it this
I'm
only?
I'm loading.
Okay. It's already.
You see that?
Yes. Yeah.
You can see. Okay.
Okay, I'm downloaded. Okay. Maybe that's my question. Another question. This is only for two decision, yes or no, or right, up or down, or maybe there is 2, 3, or 4 decision, or only just 2 choice, win or lose, right?
No two choices. No, this is not two choices. I just try to explain it.
Yeah.
Is where the history of the behavioral economics. Okay.
Okay, maybe I have to read
we
the
we have
presentation first.
we
Yeah.
have a lot of decisions and their probabilities from 0 to 1, like to win or to lose. You can a little bit win and a little bit lose. And this is all will be probability and utility function. And as I said before, you have your graph utility function and you build utility function, and if you have a lot of the huge amount of these probabilities from 0 to 1, win or lose, absolutely win, one, да? Absolutely win 1, absolutely lose 0. And a lot of middle things between them, probabilities, and you build your utility function in any cases, in any behavior of your decision makers. And you can see on the graph what will be with your economic agent, with your organization, with you as decision making in householding, for example, in a country when country do some decisions in law, taking new laws or changing some laws, for example, in taxes or something like that. So
okay, I will read the presentation. Okay, thank you for your time.
Thank you for
Thank
all.
you.
Probably.
Thank you, Mr. Adi Nugroho. Oh yeah, Miss, we have some question from audience in the YouTube because we also live stream it on our YouTube channel account. This is it okay, Miss? We have 10 questions from audience in the YouTube. Okay. Thank you. For first question, this is from Miss Febri. Are there example of traditional approaches to customer? Does each country have a different traditional approach, Miss?
Okay, the question was, can it use it in the traditional economic models? Yeah, as I understand you right. Can we use this traditional? We can use this? Okay, when we use traditional our economic models like behavior of customers, demand and supply, and something models and something like traditional economic models. We can use the point of behavioral economics, but we need to imply this the system of equation. We need to calculate and describe mathematically and economically the traditional economic model, and then we must to use some function using this traditional economic modeling, and this function then we will describe mathematically as behavioral equation. And so we have traditional something x-axis plus, and then we will have some function, and this function of behavioral economics we will expand in another equation and we'll calculate it. So we will have the influence of behavioral to the traditional modeling. If you have the traditional modeling, they do not have this influence of behavioral economics.
Thank you for answering. And the second question, this is from Miss Vasilia. How to determine the right strategy for consumer, but on the other hand, each consumer has different characteristics?
Good question. Good question. Yeah. How to determine it, the right strategy for consumers. Okay. We're talking about the huge amount of people. Any person in the whole over world can do their own decision making, and this decision making can influence on economical aspects in macro level or micro level of economic system. Even in householding, doesn't matter where, in what level it would be. We know that if we have a huge amount of these persons that can decisions, and these decisions influence economic system in any of these levels, it means that they all have they all different, you know, they all have different characteristics. To calculate these different characteristics, also again, we use our utility function, and we use the predictions using in Ukraine. Sorry. Right now, we will use our Ukraine. In Ukraine, I know how to tell you. Just forget this. We use implicity function theorem to obtain inequalities for the function, defining implicity to the above approximate equation. So also we use function of probability. In this function of this probability, we integrate the different people that can do different choices, and the probability of these different choices can be shown in how they affect on economic system. Another question I see, yeah, in chat. How to overcome when the marketing concept in sales does not work? Overcome. Marketing concept is only behavior. You know, all marketing influence behavior of any of us. They use a lot of psychological techniques to influence our behavior. And how outcome when the marketing concept in sales do not work? It means that your marketer do not have very bad market policy, and this bad market policy badly affect on your customers, something like this. It also, this can be mathematically calculated with probability function also. It's unique universal system. How can we calculate all of this? And using this probability function in any cases, in any axis, XXXS that collect your economic models. When we use this a lot of factors that influence your economic situation in any aspect, it means that you can predict anything, including are your marketolog bad or good influence on your customer behavior.
Okay, thank you so much. Yeah, and then we have a question audience in that raise hand, Mr. Anggi. Yeah, for Mr. Anggi, the time is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for the chance given to me, Ms. Novita. Good afternoon, Prof. Let me, my name is Anggi. I am from University of Bina Dharma, also Institute of Maritime as well. And mostly daily I am in vocational study. My question is regarding your PowerPoint. It is very interesting. Can we use prospect theory in tabulating or analyzing psychopolitics for state government, something like that? That's the first question. Number two is it is only probability as a gambles, or this is what we call it, the transformation of behavior regarding academic situation. I think the question is there. I'm waiting for the hints from you. Thank you.
Thank you for your questions too. Because for the first question about can we use prospect theory for political and sociological prediction?
Yes,
of course, we can. Of course we can, because if we mathematically on the dependent variable shows some value, welfare, for example, or something, GDP per person, and another economic value that can produce and show us some level of political or sociological situation. If you use these economical values in dependent variable, you can use this prospect theory also and predict political and predict the situation. For example, who from politicals wins on or losses, for example, what decision making of political in-laws, for example, affect how they will affect on economical or social on other situation in country. All depends what variables you will use to explain what you want to explain using this prospect theory. Only you build these numbers of your variables, what effect, in what this would be affect. So if you decide to show some behavioral aspect, how they affect on political situation, okay, they just you can just put on dependent variables some variables that can calculate your political, for example, some things that they can calculate and can use this prospect theory. And another, for example, you know, in political situation, I have a lot of works how the political situation and how some things influence political situation and economical situation. We have very good variables that we can use. Is this variable we can collect and we have a panel data for a long of observations, and this is universal. Point is GDP per person. If GDP per person, for example, if you show the GDP per person in the dependent variables, and then you include your axis independent variables using the behavioral economics, if you see that your GDP per person lows, it means the political decision making was badly, because badly. If the GDP per person go up, it means the political decisions are good. Your country is increasing in this step. This is a universal, you know, this is universal aspect that shows the political decision makers and their effect on this. If you want to describe, for example, how they some law that some politicals wants only to apply, not applying right now, just want to do something. Yeah, for example, some politicals want to change tax rate, or some politicals wants to change license expenses. For example, anything. Just political decision makings that influence economic value, or probably maybe some of them may lead to your country to war. It also affects on your economic situation. It doesn't matter. The universal, you can use the universal point is GDP per person, and just simulate for the future. If you have a prediction of the GDP using the panel data from another observation, or just to understand the past situation using this prospect theory. This prospect theory, as I said, you need to include into your traditional economic models. If you do your traditional economic models, then you need to have one axis, one dependent variables, one of these dependent variables that would be another function of this behavioral economics. So you calculate your behavioral economics function, and when you have the result of this calculated behavioral model calculated results, you can include internal daniels as independent variables to your traditional economic models, and only then you can have your result.
I see. Lastly, may I ask you a closing question, please?
My what? I can hear. I can hear you.
My closing question is: did we have to validate the tabulation of it? Because I saw this calibration 1 and 2 and closing by calibration conclusion. So I wonder whether it is need validation or not. That's all. Thank you.
I have very bad connection because we do not have electricity. I think the generator that works and have the opportunity to tell you how something, it just ended the flow, I think, and my connections is losses. I can hear just a little, okay. Not everything.
And how about now? Can you hear me?
We in Kiev here, we do not have electricity after Russian bombing, and we use the generator. And generator, yeah, we do not have electricity and internet connection. To talking with you, we use generator and Starlink, and I see that my generation ends fluid on this, and it's up and down, and
it's okay. It's okay. My question, I want to repeat my question is: did we need a validation? Only that all. One question: did we need a validation for closing the tabulation?
If I hear you right, you're asking the tabulation, yeah, calibration, yeah.
Validation. VALIDATION. Validation.
Can hear you.
Okay. It's all right. Thank you. I return to Miss Novita. Thank you. I'm standing.
Validation. Somebody in the chat just to quiet. Validation. Really? Yeah, of course. Validation. Of course. The validation. You can use different simulations, experiments when you using just only the statistics theory of validation of your results. You can understand what result you have. Yeah, for example, you have panel data for long of observation. For example, 50 years ago, for your point, and you built your model, and then of course you have to reach a model to make statistical tests for this model and to understand if this model can be useful or cannot be useful using only statistical validation. If you see this is not in statistical, for example, F statistics or another kind of experimental validation that everybody knows of us, you cannot do with this your model nothing, because it means nothing. Understand?
Okay. That's all. Thank you. Miss Novita, I return back to you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for Mr. Hengki. Yeah, and the question, this is from Mr. Solikan. How to get data for the variable in the calculation? Is it a survey and is there a limit?
Of calculation, no limit. Only US. Thank you for your question. The limit of observation you must to produce for yourself. For example, we use statistical experiments and observations to lead your panel data, and as we know from Statistica, the minimum of observation in this panel data must be not less than 30. If then less than 30, your model won't show you exactly what it needs to show. We use the statistical observation. For example, I use the observation statistical from the beginning of 60s of last century to this day, and I try to build it quarterly because the quarterly gives me more observation. And this a big, huge panel data can show some real experiment and real result for the modeling in any economic cases.
Okay, thank you for answering, Ms. Olesia. I think very clear for answering for question from audience. Yeah, before I closing this event, maybe for all audience, you are asking again or no?
You cannot hear me or what?
Pardon?
Tadi ngomongnya barengan.
Oh,
Cannot hear here.
Oh, cannot hear. All right.
okay. I guess no one else asking again. Before I closing this event, from audience, you will asking again or no?
No, it's clear.
Okay. Yeah, I think is enough for this session. Before I close this event, maybe we can take a picture for documentation, Miss Olesia.
Yeah,
Miss,
of course.
Miss Febri will be handled for this session. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Miss Novita. Okay, for those who haven't activated the camera, you can active or open the camera first so we can take photos together. Okay, let me count from 1, 2, 3. Once again, 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you. I will return the event to Miss Novita.
Thank you for Miss Febri. Before I close this class today, from Miss Olesia, you will say something before?
Thank you for opportunity to talk with you. I'm very glad to see you and very thankful for your questions. They're very competitive and For me, it's very, very big pleasure to have your feedback. Thank you for all. Have a nice day. Goodbye.
Okay, thank you for Miss Olesia for sharing your knowledge. Is it very beneficial for all audience? Thank you for all students from STEKOM University and all participants for attending this class today until last session. We hope we can meet again in other event in the future and Ukraine will be okay. We will support. Thank you so much for Miss Olesia.
Thank you for you. Goodbye.
Goodbye for everyone.
Bye.
Thank you so much. See you soon for Miss Olesia. Thank you. Good and goodbye. Ya, untuk para partisipan bisa meninggalkan acara. Terima kasih.
Okay, I think that's enough for today's event. Thank you. Good afternoon. Have a good day. Hey, sorry. Have a good rest. Bye.